Hello, happy Tuesday. I'm going to do the clue review for the previous week's last Thursday game, blind tasting benchmark region. The grape was Corvina, and the wine, the blind tasting benchmark that I was having you guys shoot for, was Amarone from Valpolicella. There's obviously a lot of wines made from Corvina there. You've got your basic Valpolicella, you've got Ripasso, but I really wanted to just go with Amarone and kind of narrow you down towards that because it is a wine that is a really solid banker that is used in blind tasting exams, because the style of Amarone is so distinctive that it kind of helps you put the other wines in your flight in context. So you'll often see it in an Italy flight. And of course, you can do a regional flight from the Veneto, from anything from Pinot Grigio to Soave, and of course, Amarone in there. So let's review the clues and see how we could have gotten down to Amarone as opposed to like a basic Valpolicella. So clue number 1, dried red cherries. So note the nature of the fruit, dried. Clue 2, I had prunes, so dried red plums. Also included some fresh red plums there because I really wanted to emphasize the red fruit character that you'll see here. You know, Amarone is a big, robust, big alcohol wine, but a lot of times it is driven by red fruit. You think of the area in Valpolicella, it is a moderate to warm continental climate. So obviously warming influences, you can get some of the dark fruit. Corvina, being a mid to late ripening grape, holds on to its red fruit and its acidity and its freshness a little longer. And so that's why a lot of these wines tend to be led by the red fruit component. So those are the first 2 clues. Then clue 3, dried violets. So emphasizing the dried again. Clue 4, we had kind of the floral herbs, rosemary in particular. You know, that's something for me that personally resonates when I think of herbal notes, because there's a lot of different spectrums in herbal, but the floral scented. You know, Amarone, Valpolicella wines, they do have a lovely floral component to them. And so rosemary for me is a good trigger. You might have another herb that kind of triggers you more. So you kind of think about, go to your spice cabinet and smell the different herbs and what is a very floral scented versus a green scented herb on it. Clue 5 was black licorice, and there was also some more herbs in the picture. So also emphasizing the herbal note. Clue 6 was dark chocolate, but I love this clue. Apparently from the IG account, they had this, it's kind of a salume made from dark chocolate that also included some bitter nuts in it. So dark chocolate, bitter nuts. If you're thinking along the lines of salume and charcuterie, that was a good mental image. I think that nails Amarone quite a bit, because Amarone is overall a savory component. It's a savory wine. So you think of the dried notes, herbal notes, and those savory notes. That really pegs Amarone. Now, to get to Amarone, the dry notes were going to be the bigger clues versus a basic Valpolicella, which wouldn't have that. Ripasso will have a little bit. Ripasso is that in between. They call it the baby Amarone, where they take some of the skins from the Amarone and add it to a batch of basic Valpolicella. And so you get that kind of marriage of both worlds. So it'll have some, but not to the degree that an Amarone would. But it really is the structure that is going to hone you in on Amarone in a blind tasting. So let's get to that structure. First clue, the color, deep ruby to medium garnet. So Corvina, little thick-skinned grape, but you have to think about what's going to be happening to it. The process of the desiccation in Amarone plays so much in the glass of what comes out. These grapes are going to spend 3 to 4 months drying in very well ventilated lofts, humidity control, especially with the higher quality producers. They have this down to a science. The grape is going to lose a third of its weight, at least. And so that's going to concentrate everything. It's going to concentrate, with the raisination, the skin. So you get a higher skin to juice ratio. So there's more of the extraction of the colors, of the tannins on there. It's going to concentrate the sugars, going to concentrate the potential alcohol on the wines, and concentrate the flavors on it. Acidity, that's one thing that surprises people. Continuing with our clues here. We have a pronounced intensity, a lot of concentration, a lot of things going on, high acidity. And I think some people that kind of caught them by surprise. And I think a really good way to conceptualize how drying can help concentrate even the acid is find yourself some dried fruit. In the UK, there's this brand here called Super Garden that they freeze dry it, so it's obviously not the same process that they're using to make Amarone, drying out in the loft, but really, really fun. Several different types of fruit here: cherries, strawberries, they got raspberries, even gooseberries. So again, easier to find in the UK, gooseberries versus folks elsewhere. But what's fun about these is you try them and you really get the idea of how the drying concentrates everything. Concentrates the flavors and particularly the acidity on air. Way more tart with that. And the gooseberry, dear God, try the freeze-dried gooseberry. It is tart like you wouldn't believe. So if you're a sour fiend, you'll dig this. But that same thing is happening on a different scale there when they're drying the grapes for Amarone. Everything's getting concentrated, the acid and the color. So it's going to be more of that kind of deep ruby, and it can go to medium garnet because you think the drying process itself, that's a very oxidative process. And so when you introduce oxygen into the equation with the red wine, you get the color going more towards that garnet with a little bit more of the orange hue. It probably won't be as pale garnet, like you can see through it, like you think of an aged Pinot or an aged Nebbiolo. There'll still be some color there because of the nature of the Corvina grape. So that pale, that can be that deep ruby to that medium garnet. That's kind of the spectrum you'll see depending on the age of your Amarone. As I mentioned, again, pronounced intensity. The sweetness is dry, but it can be off dry. Often they will leave a little bit of residual sugar in Amarone because it helps offset some of the volatile acidity. You know, you get that high acid from the concentration, but there's also the potential of VA in the process. And a lot of winemakers, they have a house style, some that would like a little bit more VA and some like a little less. You know, if they do have a little VA, that kind of adds a little tang. You think a little bit along the lines of balsamic. You know, it's not going to necessarily taste like balsamic, but you get some of that savory tang from the VA. A little bit of residual sugar helps balance that. It also helps balance some of the natural bitterness that you get from the grapes. You know, usually a little harder pressing is very traditional in Italian winemaking. To press the grapes a little harder, get a little bit more bitter. Because in general, with Italian wines and Italian flavors, you think about it, you go to the cuisine, bitter flavors are a positive. It's not something that's avoided as much as you think of in other regions, like American cuisine in the US. You know, we don't like things that are bitter. In Italians, bitter flavors play really well. And a little bit of residual sugar helps play with that, balance it a little bit more. It's not going to be a lot of residual sugar. Maximum 9 grams per liter. So often you will see that 5 to 9 grams of residual sugar in Amarone. But the next time you have it, just taste, you know, kind of focus a little bit on, you know, the tip of your tongue where you usually pick up sweetness more, and see if you pick up that little bit of off-dry nature in Amarone. Continuing with our structure, you know, I mentioned the high acid. Volatile acidity plays a role in that as well. Medium to high ripe tannins. Now, I would err more towards that medium plus to high. I went with the medium because that's what the WSET Diploma text puts on there. And there is a big range of quality, you can say, with Amarone, because Valpolicella is a pretty big area, and they do make quite a bit different styles, including some that are meant to be more approachable, a little lighter. But you think again of that desiccation process and how it's concentrating everything, shrinking the grape, increasing our skin to juice ratio. That's going to increase the extraction that you're going to have of those tannins. They will be ripe with the nature of the climate, so you'll feel them, and they won't be as like firm as you think of like a Barolo with that, but they're going to be there. So again, I would usually err on the higher side of tannins myself with Amarone. Full-bodied, most definitely. The drying process too also adds some glycerol, which will add some of that weight and that mouthfeel. So definitely an Amarone, big full body. You think of your basic Valpolicella, that's going to be more that medium bodied. Ripasso, you know, medium plus. Amarone's the big boy. You're gonna feel that in your mouth. High alcohol. The minimum alcohol for it to be an Amarone is 14%. So on the WSET scale, that's always going to be in the high alcohol range, and you'll feel that warmth in your throat. Quality will range from good to outstanding because, again, a big production area, so you'll have anything from really high quality producers that are making outstanding wines to the more average stuff that still commands a bit of a premium because it's Amarone on the name. And that's also in that price, you know, that mid to super premium price. $30 up to $300 plus. So those are the clues, leaving it to Amarone. I will get started on today's game. I apologize, a little late start. My schedule that was weird from last week is kind of carried over to this week, but I will get that going. You guys have a good one.